On the Quaesitor lab ship, in Earth orbit 2187, a Quaesitor scientist, Dr. Vel'thara, her iridescent skin shifting with an unspoken tension, laid out an experiment designed to push the boundaries of consciousness. It was a simulation of pure terror, a journey into the darkest corners of the mind. Then a hand rose, not a scientist's, not a soldier's, but that of a 32-year-old human maintenance engineer named Chen. His gesture was simple, almost weary, and it brought the bustling observation room to an absolute, unnerving silence. What compels a species to volunteer for the unimaginable with such quiet, almost mundane acceptance? This isn't a story of brute force or technological superiority. It's a tale of how one unexpected moment redefined courage in the known universe. Before we delve into this extraordinary narrative, tell us, where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below. Now, prepare to witness how one gesture can rewrite the stars. The prismatic surfaces of the Quaesitor lab ship, a silent titan of scientific pursuit, glistened with an ethereal glow as it maintained its delicate dance above Earth's cerulean sphere in March of 2187. Below, the planet spun, a mesmerizing marble of blues and greens, utterly indifferent to the profound drama unfolding within the vessel's pristine, sterile confines. Dr. Vel'thara, the ancient Quaesitor scientist, whose 3 centuries of existence had spanned epochs of galactic discovery, stood at the heart of the observation deck. Her towering form, nearly 2.5 meters of elegant, alien physiology, was usually a beacon of calm, but today, subtle shifts in her iridescent skin hinted at a profound internal tension. The very air around her seemed to hum with a weight of expectation, a silent current of anticipation and dread that permeated the highly filtered atmosphere. This was no ordinary research vessel. The Quaesitor was a crucible designed for the most audacious interspecies experiments, a neutral ground suspended between the vast indifference of the cosmos and the intricate, often conflicting ambitions of galactic civilization. Vel'thara's latest endeavor, dubbed the Threshold Protocol, was a testament to the Quaesitore's unyielding drive for understanding, pushing the very boundaries of what was considered ethically permissible. Before her, arranged in a semicircle of expectant silence, were 30 representatives from a panoply of galactic species. The Vril, known for their crystalline intelligence, observed with a detached, almost mathematical curiosity. The bulbous-headed Xylons twitched their sensory tendrils, their expressions unreadable, yet their posture conveyed a deep, if wary, engagement. The lithe, 6-limbed seraphim shifted nervously, their bioluminescent patterns flickering with subtle unease. Each species brought its own unique perspective, its own inherited fears and cultural biases, to the precipice of Vel'thara's controversial design. Some leaned forward, their gazes fixed on the central chamber with an almost fervent approval, drawn by the allure of pure knowledge. Others, however, betrayed their apprehension with barely disguised expressions of revulsion, their forms recoiling, finding the Quaesitor's pursuit too cold, too clinical, too close to the desecration of the sacred self. Vel'thara's creation was a marvel of neural engineering, a simulation chamber capable of projecting what she termed personalized nightmares. This wasn't merely virtual reality. It was an immersive, all-encompassing sensory experience designed to bypass conscious defenses, tapping directly into the darkest, most primitive recesses of a species' collective subconscious. It was a weaponized empathy, crafting scenarios so viscerally terrifying, so profoundly illogical, that they challenged the very framework of sanity. Her own Quaesitor assistants, carefully selected for their mental fortitude, had succumbed during the system's calibration. 3 of them suffering complete mental collapses, their minds unable to reconcile the simulated horrors with the perceived safety of reality. Their fractured psyches were a grim testament to the experiment's potency. Vel'thara began her explanation, her modulated voice, translated instantaneously into countless languages via neural implants, resonating with a familiar, almost surgical precision. The volunteer will be exposed to approximately 17 minutes of complete neural stimulation, she stated, her four compound eyes sweeping across the diverse assembly, noting every twitch, every flicker of emotion. There will be no physical pain, but the psychological trauma may be permanent. We are seeking to understand the absolute limits of consciousness when confronted with logical impossibilities, with existential threats distilled from the deepest fears of any given civilization. She paused, allowing the gravity of her words to settle, to ripple through the minds of her audience. Therefore, we seek to determine if anyone would be willing to. It was in that pregnant silence, just as the crucial invitation was about to fully articulate itself, that a hand, unmistakably human, rose from the Earth delegation. It was not a dramatic gesture, devoid of theatricality. There was no heroic pause, no solemn declaration preceding it. The hand simply lifted, almost instinctively, with an unburdened ease, much like someone offering to fetch a trivial item. It belonged to Marcus Chen, a 32-year-old maintenance engineer from Seattle. His brown eyes, perpetually shadowed with a subtle weariness that seemed to burrow deep within, scanned the chamber, devoid of any discernible emotion beyond a kind of quiet acceptance. His hands, calloused and scarred from years of grappling with failing machinery and frayed circuits, were a stark contrast to the smooth, unblemished appendages of the alien diplomats and scientists surrounding him. Marcus was no star. He wasn't a brilliant theoretical physicist, nor a decorated interstellar marine, nor a silver-tongued diplomat shaping galactic treaties. He was, by all accounts, merely a technician, his presence on the Quaesitor almost an administrative accident, a quota filler in a high-stakes scientific endeavor. He was a survivor, yes, of the devastating Seattle fires of 2156 that had scorched his home and memory, of the brutal water riots that followed, where chaos had claimed what little remained of his family. These were traumas not openly discussed, but etched into the very fabric of his being, leaving behind a raw, unprocessed scar that few could perceive. Yet, in this moment, his unassuming gesture had drawn every single eye in the room, eclipsing the polished veneers of galactic power and intellect. The silence that followed Marcus's simple act was absolute, so dense it seemed to absorb the very oxygen from the air, each second stretching into an eternity. Vel'thara's four eyes, usually a symphony of synchronized observation, blinked in a staggered, disoriented sequence, a rare, profound manifestation of Quaesitor shock. Her normally placid green skin pulsed rapidly, shifting to a worried, deep violet hue. The palpable silence within the Quaesitor's observation deck thickened, heavy with the weight of scientific ambition and the subtle anxieties of 30 diverse species. Dr. Vel'thara, the 300-year-old Quaesitor scientist, whose every movement was usually imbued with an almost ritualistic precision, held the attention of the room. Her four compound eyes, capable of perceiving spectra far beyond the human range, meticulously scanned the expectant faces, assessing not just comprehension, but the inherent fears her words would inevitably stir. The air, recycled and sterilized, hummed with a low, almost imperceptible thrum of energy, a testament to the immense power coiled within the neural simulation chamber that lay at the heart of her controversial experiment. Vel'thara paused, allowing the gravity of the moment to settle, before continuing her explanation. Her voice, resonant and clear, was immediately translated into the myriad languages spoken by the delegates, each word delivered with the clinical detachment characteristic of Quaesitor scientific discourse, yet carrying an undercurrent of profound solemnity. The volunteer will be exposed to approximately 17 minutes of complete neural stimulation, she reiterated, her gaze momentarily lingering on the human delegation. It is imperative to understand that while there will be no physical pain, the chamber is designed to preclude any somatic damage. The psychological trauma may be permanent. We anticipate profound alterations to cognitive function, potentially inducing states of chronic dissociation or existential crisis. We are pushing beyond the known thresholds of consciousness, confronting it with logical impossibilities and primal fears distilled from the darkest recesses of collective evolutionary experience. Her words hung in the air, a chilling pronouncement. The Xylan's tendrils drooped slightly, their usually vibrant hues dimming. The serpentine ambassador Krell 9 of the Draxian Empire shifted uneasily, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the chamber's sterile gleam, his bifurcated tongue flickering with a rare, instinctive unease. Even the stoic Vril, typically unflappable, exhibited a barely perceptible contraction of their crystalline exoskeletons. Vel'thara finished her statement, her gaze returning to the room, preparing to issue the gravest question imaginable. Therefore, we seek to determine if any sentient being among you would be willing to. Before the complete sentence could fully form, before the delicate balance of anticipation and dread could truly coalesce, a hand rose. It was a simple, unadorned human hand, devoid of any embellishment or dramatic flourish. The gesture was almost instinctual, utterly lacking in self-importance, rising with the almost mundane ease of someone offering to fetch a cup of water. It belonged to Marcus Chen. The effect was instantaneous and profound. A ripple of absolute, stunned silence washed over the room, as if the very sound waves had been absorbed by the sudden, unexpected act. 30 sets of alien eyes, diverse in their structure and perception, converged on the single human. Vel'thara herself faltered, her multi-century composure momentarily shattered. Her 4 compound eyes, usually a symphony of synchronized observation, blinked in a staggered, disoriented sequence, a rare and potent Corthani expression of profound shock. Her iridescent skin, which usually maintained a placid green during formal proceedings, pulsed rapidly, shifting to a deep, worried violet hue, reflecting the unprecedented nature of the human's immediate volunteerism. Marcus, meanwhile, seemed utterly oblivious to the seismic impact of his action. He pushed himself from his seat, moving with an almost weary, pragmatic resolve. His brown eyes, perpetually shadowed with the lingering ghosts of past traumas, now held a faint, almost exasperated glint of efficiency. He met Vel'thara's bewildered gaze without a trace of bravado or fear. "Yes," Marcus replied, his voice even, carrying a low rumble that suggested a profound, unshakable weariness. "How long will it take? I have to check the life support systems on Deck C by 1500 hours. His words, stripped of any cosmic significance, focused instead on the utterly mundane, a stark contrast to the existential gravitas of the situation. He minimized the inherent gravity of confronting absolute psychological horror, framing it as a mere inconvenience in his daily schedule, a task to be completed before his next shift. It was a practicality so profound it bordered on the absurd, baffling the assembled galactic intellects. "If you comprehend what is being requested?" she asked, her voice a low thrum of disbelief, her gaze fixed on the human, searching for any sign of misunderstanding, any flicker of bravado or misjudgment. "Yes," Marcus replied, his voice even, already pushing himself from his seat, moving with an almost mundane resolve towards the chamber. "How long will it take? I have to check the life support systems on Deck C by 1500 hours. His words, utterly devoid of any recognition of the extraordinary nature of his offer, struck an almost comedic chord against the backdrop of galactic tension. Yet they were utterly sincere. It was Ambassador Krell 9 of the Draxian delegation who finally shattered the stunned silence, his reptilian form coiling slightly, his bifurcated tongue flickering with incredulity. Krell 9 represented a species renowned for its meticulous caution, its calculated risk assessment. "This is madness," he hissed, his voice a low, guttural rumble, instantly translated. "None of our species would dispatch a volunteer without at least 3 full sessions of psychological preparation. This is reckless, irresponsible." To the Draxian, such a spontaneous act was not brave, but utterly foolish. Marcus merely shrugged, a subtle, almost dismissive movement of his shoulders. Preparation for what? Anyway, I won't know what to expect, will I? His logic, while brutally simple, seemed to sidestep the complex ethical frameworks of the alien species, leaving Krell 9 momentarily speechless, his reptilian eyes narrowed in bewildered outrage. A heated discussion erupted then, a cacophony of alien voices, arguments overlapping, each species asserting its own cultural tenets and ethical boundaries. The logical Vorin, with their intricate internal processors, argued for the imperative of informed consent and exhaustive risk assessment, deeming the humans' immediate volunteerism a statistical anomaly, a potentially dangerous outlier. The empathetic Lumina, their forms radiating soft, shifting colors, expressed profound distress at the prospect of subjecting any conscious being to such psychological torment without extensive safeguards. They all agreed. It was unethical. The humans clearly did not grasp the profound, indelible risks. Marcus, they insisted, must be prevented for his own good. Vel'thara, despite her own unease, stood firm. The rules of the experiment, painstakingly crafted and agreed upon by the Galactic Federation, were clear. Conscious, adult volunteers, free of duress, could participate. And Marcus, inexplicably, frustratingly, seemed irritatingly conscious and terrifyingly indifferent to the very real precipice of mental annihilation before him. His calm, almost detached acceptance was an enigma that baffled even her centuries of Corthani understanding. He simply remained unwavering. Finally, the arguments faded into frustrated murmurs, defeated by the unwavering clarity of the experiment's charter and Marcus's stubborn, quiet resolve. As he was led towards the chamber, an octagonal space where the absorptive black material seemed to swallow not just light, but sound itself, Vel'thara made one final, desperate attempt to penetrate his composure. Her voice was softer now, tinged with a genuine concern that momentarily transcended her scientific detachment. "Mr. Chen," she began, her 4 eyes fixed on his tired human ones, "I designed this experiment studying the collective traumas of 17 civilizations. What you will witness inside will be constructed from the most primitive, distilled human fears, evolutionary phobias, existential terrors, the very dissolution of your concept of reality." Her words were a stark warning, a final plea for him to reconsider. Marcus looked at her, his gaze steady, profound in its quiet weariness. "Doctor," he said, his voice surprisingly soft, yet imbued with an unshakable conviction, "I grew up in Seattle during the fires of 2156. I lost my family in the water riots that followed. I've spent 15 years working on starships, where one mistake, one tiny flaw in a life support system, means 300 people die a slow, agonizing death in the vacuum." He paused, his gaze sweeping the gleaming, technological marvels of the lab, then returning to Vel'thara's concerned face. "I'm not being brave, Doctor. I'm just tired of being afraid." With that simple, raw confession, he stepped over the threshold into the abyssal black. The heavy door hissed, then locked into place, its finality echoing through the silent observation room. The alien representatives watched, their various physiologies rigid with anticipation, as the human engineer disappeared into the unknown. The Quaesitor, designed for the pursuit of knowledge, now held within its heart a single human, confronting a horror meticulously crafted from the very essence of fear. The true experiment, Vel'thara knew, had only just begun. It was Ambassador Krell 9 of the Draxian Empire who finally shattered the stunned silence, his serpentine form coiling tighter, his bifurcated tongue flickering with barely contained outrage. His species, renowned for their meticulous planning and obsessive caution, considered such an impulsive act not brave, but utterly reckless, a profound dereliction of duty to self. "This is madness," Krell 9 hissed, his voice a low, guttural rumble, instantly translated and amplified throughout the observation deck. This human clearly does not comprehend the magnitude of the risk. None of our species would dispatch a volunteer for such a profound psychological ordeal without at least 3 full cycles of preparatory therapy and rigorous mental conditioning. This is reckless, utterly irresponsible, and deeply unethical. His multifaceted eyes swiveled between Vel'thara and Marcus, seeking to impose the Draxian code of cautious self-preservation onto this bewildering human. Marcus merely offered a shrug, a subtle, almost dismissive movement of his broad shoulders. Preparation for what? Anyway, I won't know what to expect, will I? His logic, brutally simple and unburdened by philosophical complexities, seemed to cut through the intricate ethical frameworks of the alien species, leaving Krell 9 momentarily speechless, his reptilian features contorted in a mixture of outrage and profound confusion. The human's almost annoying indifference to the profound danger was a new form of resistance in itself, an alien concept to the cautious Draxian. A cacophony of alien voices erupted then, a wave of agitated murmurs and sharp, modulated protests. The logical Vorin, with their intricate internal processors, argued for the imperative of informed consent and exhaustive risk assessment, deeming the human's immediate volunteerism a statistical anomaly, a potentially dangerous outlier that could invalidate the entire experiment. Their data matrices, usually so precise, now pulsed with unresolved variables. The empathetic lumina, their forms radiating soft, shifting colors that reflected their profound emotional states, expressed profound distress at the prospect of subjecting any conscious being to such psychological torment without extensive safeguards. Their bioluminescent patterns flickered with concern, fearing the unseen suffering this human might endure. They all agreed. It was unethical, a blatant disregard for established safety protocols. They insisted Marcus be prevented, for his own good. They argued that humans, in their relative youth as a spacefaring species, fundamentally underestimated the profound, indelible risks associated with Vel'thara's threshold protocol. The chamber buzzed with a rising tide of galactic dissent, a clash of ethical paradigms and species-specific survival instincts. But Vel'thara, despite her own Corthani misgivings about the human's impulsive nature, stood firm. The rules of the experiment, painstakingly crafted and agreed upon by all member species of the Galactic Federation, were clear, unambiguous. Only conscious, consenting adults, free of any coercion or duress, could participate. And Marcus, inexplicably, frustratingly, appeared both irritatingly conscious and terrifyingly indifferent to the profound psychological precipice before him. His calm, almost detached acceptance of the inevitable, his refusal to be swayed by their alien anxieties, was an enigma that baffled even her centuries of Corthani understanding. He simply remained, unwavering, a monument to a species whose understanding of danger seemed to operate on an entirely different spectrum. The debate raged, but against the unwavering clarity of the experiment's charter and the human's stubborn, quiet resolve, it eventually faded into frustrated murmurs. The rules, for better or worse, allowed it. Despite the cacophony of alien protests and the palpable ethical unease that had filled the Quaesitor's observation deck, the Galactic Federation's rigid protocols remained unyielding. The rules, painstakingly codified over centuries of interspecies diplomacy and scientific exploration, explicitly allowed for conscious, consenting adult volunteers. Dr. Vel'thara, herself a creature of profound logic and adherence to scientific integrity, knew there was no circumventing this clause. The alien delegates, a kaleidoscope of frustration and bewilderment, could only watch, their arguments exhausted, as the inevitable approached. Ambassador Krell 9, his reptilian form radiating an almost palpable disapproval, scowled, his bifurcated tongue twitching with irritation at the human's inexplicable recklessness. He saw not courage, but a profound, almost suicidal ignorance. Marcus Chen, a man whose life had taught him the harsh lessons of inevitability, seemed to move with a quiet, almost understated dignity through the hushed ranks of the observing species. Two Quaesitor security personnel, their iridescent scales shifting from placid green to a more formal, somber gray, flanked him respectfully, their presence more ceremonial than custodial. Marcus's eyes, still shadowed with that intrinsic weariness, took in the multitude of alien faces, the crystalline structures of the vril, the drooping tendrils of his islands, the subtly flickering bioluminescence of the lumina, each expression a mirror reflecting various shades of curiosity, fear, or profound bewilderment. He offered no nervous smiles, no defiant gestures, simply a steady, unhurried gait towards his destination. The simulation chamber itself was an imposing structure, a monolithic octagonal prism of unknown alloys situated at the very center of the observation arena. Its surfaces, crafted from a material that seemed to drink light rather than reflect it, rendered it an absolute, profound black. As Marcus approached, the ambient lighting of the deck seemed to dim, drawn into the chamber's abyssal maw, creating an eerie, almost sacred space around its entrance. It felt less like a scientific instrument and more like a void made manifest, a gateway to unreality. The air around it felt colder, thinner, vibrating with a subtle, low-frequency hum that hinted at immense, contained power. Dr. Vel'thara, her towering form now bathed in the eerie dimness cast by the chamber, stepped forward, her iridescent skin shifting through a spectrum of deep blues and purples, reflecting a complex inner turmoil. Her scientific imperative warred with a nascent, almost paternal concern for the seemingly unassuming human before her. Her four compound eyes, usually so sharp and discerning, now held a glint of genuine apprehension. This was her creation, her ultimate test, and she recognized the profound danger within. "Mr. Chen," she began, her voice modulated to a low, somber tone, its careful precision now infused with a desperate, final plea. "I designed this experiment by meticulously studying the collective traumas of 17 advanced civilizations. I have distilled the most potent forms of existential dread, the most insidious psychological poisons known to sentient life. What you will encounter within this chamber will not merely be an illusion. It will be an experience constructed from the raw material of human fear. Not simply the fear of pain or death, but something far more insidious." She gestured towards the black maw of the chamber, her hand trembling almost imperceptibly. "You will confront primitive human fears, the suffocating terror of absolute isolation, the gnawing dread of endless darkness, the visceral panic of losing all control, of absolute vulnerability. These are the ancient echoes of your species' earliest struggles for survival." Her voice deepened, becoming a chilling whisper. "You will face your evolutionary phobias, predators that do not exist, natural disasters of impossible scale, diseases that consume form and self, the decay of everything you hold sacred. These are the nightmares that have shaped your biology, amplified 1,000-fold." Vel'thara paused, her gaze fixed on Marcus, her multifaceted eyes attempting to pierce his quiet composure. "But more than that," she continued, her voice now barely above a murmur, yet resonating with amplified horror, "you will experience existential terrors. The crushing realization of cosmic indifference, the profound meaninglessness of all existence, the terrifying certainty of non-being. And finally, Mr. Chen, the simulation will target the very core of your perception. It will induce the complete dissolution of your concept of reality. Your subjective experience will fracture into incomprehensible fragments. You will lose yourself, unable to distinguish reality from illusion, unable to recognize your own identity. You will forget what it means to be." Her words were a torrent of carefully chosen horrors, a final, desperate attempt to convey the absolute, unmaking power of the chamber. Marcus listened, his head tilted slightly, his tired eyes meeting Vel'thara's with an unnerving calm. A profound quiet descended once more, broken only by the faint hum of the chamber. When he finally spoke, his voice was not defiant, nor boastful, but imbued with a deep, almost melancholic understanding. "Doctor," he began, his gaze unwavering, "I appreciate the warning. Truly." He took a slow, deliberate breath. "But you see, my apparent fearlessness, it's not courage, not in the way your species or these others might understand it." He gestured vaguely at the silent, watching delegates. "It's exhaustion. I'm just tired of having fear." His eyes, dark and heavy, seemed to travel back in time to a different Earth. "I was only a kid during the Seattle fires of 2156. The sky wasn't blue, it was always orange, thick with ash. I saw things no child should ever see. My home, my family, everything went up in smoke. And the water riots that followed? That was a different kind of fire, Doctor. People turning on each other, fighting for scraps in the flooded streets. The air thick with desperation and violence. Fear was a constant companion then. It lived in every shadow, every empty pantry, every whispered rumor." He shifted his weight, his calloused hands accustomed to the cold precision of machinery, now unconsciously clenching and unclenching. "And for 15 years, I've worked as a maintenance engineer on starships. You know what that means, Doctor? It means every single day I walk through conduits and crawl spaces where one faulty wire, one loosened panel, one microscopic crack in the hull could mean 300 people die. Not in a heroic battle, not for a grand cause, but because I missed a reading, because I wasn't careful enough, because I failed. Death, Doctor, is not some abstract concept to me. It's a calculation. It's a system failure. It's the constant, quiet hum of a life support unit that might just give out. It's always there, breathing down your neck." He paused, a profound weariness settling over his features. "I've faced enough real monsters in my life, Doctor, enough real, tangible fear that the idea of a simulated one just doesn't hit the same anymore. I'm not saying I'm not scared. I'm just done letting it control me. When something needs to be done, someone has to do it. And honestly, I'm just tired of waiting for someone else." With that, Marcus offered a faint, almost imperceptible nod to Vel'thara, a gesture of quiet finality. He turned, his gaze fixed on the abyssal opening of the chamber, and took the few remaining steps. He didn't hesitate, didn't look back. His form, slightly slumped with the weight of unaddressed grief and perpetual fatigue, disappeared into the impenetrable blackness. The heavy door, a massive slab of light-absorbing material, began its slow, inexorable descent. A soft, hydraulic hiss filled the observation deck, a mechanical sigh that felt unnervingly final. It sealed shut with a soft, yet resonant, thud echoing through the now perfectly silent room. The only sound left was the faint, continuous hum of the chamber, a low, expectant thrumming that seemed to vibrate not just through the deck plating, but through the very bones of every observer. The suspense was a living thing, an invisible, crushing weight. Vel'thara stood motionless, her iridescent skin now a deep, unreadable indigo, her four eyes fixed on the impenetrable surface of the chamber, as if trying to peer into the abyss her creation had just claimed. The galactic representatives, frozen in their various forms, held their collective breath, their minds grappling with the enigmatic human who had just walked willingly into the unknown. The test had begun. The heavy door of the neural simulation chamber hissed shut, sealing Marcus Chen within its abyssal black embrace. A profound, almost sacred silence descended upon the Quaesitor's observation deck, broken only by the low, continuous thrumming of the chamber's active systems. Outside, time seemed to slow, each tick of the internal chronometer an eternity for the gathered delegates. Inside, for Marcus, time would cease to exist as he knew it. Dr. Vel'thara, her iridescent skin now a deep, unreadable indigo, stood motionless before the chamber's impenetrable surface. Her four compound eyes, usually so analytically detached, now held a flicker of apprehension. Around her, the alien representatives leaned forward, their diverse physiologies tense with anticipation, their gazes fixed on the array of holographic displays that projected Marcus's neural data in real time. Streams of intricate bio-readings, fluctuating brainwave patterns, and intricate psychometric analyses painted a chillingly precise portrait of his internal experience. The Quaesitor scientists, a small team Vel'thara had personally selected, monitored the data with clinical intensity, their digits flying across control panels. From a moment the chamber initiated its full neural stimulation, the displays flared with unprecedented activity. Marcus was immediately plunged into the very first horror, a primal, all-consuming fear meticulously culled from humanity's deep subconscious. The slow, agonizing terror of death by asphyxiation. His neural pathways screamed as the simulation replicated every horrifying nuance. The sudden cessation of breathable air, the burning in his lungs, the frantic, involuntary gasps that yielded nothing but searing pain. He thrashed against invisible bonds, his mind fabricating the crushing weight of earth, the icy grip of water, the suffocating embrace of endless void. The monitors showed a violent surge in panic responses, a desperate fight for survival that momentarily dwarfed all other readings. The simulation was working perfectly. Yet, even as his primitive survival instinct screamed, something unexpected began to manifest in the data. Vel'thara's eyes widened, her skin shifting to a startled crimson. While the fear response was intense, a secondary, analytical pattern emerged. A calm, almost detached segment of his brain actively observing, categorizing the sensations, treating them as discrete data points. The scenario shifted, escalating the assault. Marcus found himself suspended in the vast, indifferent blackness of space, witnessing the agonizing, protracted demise of his home world. The Earth, once a vibrant marble of blue and green, withered and collapsed, consumed by a rapidly decaying sun. He watched, helpless, as continents buckled, oceans boiled, and all memory of humanity was swallowed by the void. The sheer scale of destruction, the cosmic annihilation of his entire species, was designed to crush the spirit, to render all effort meaningless. The data displayed a profound wave of despair, a sense of overwhelming futility washing over him. But then, the analytical pattern returned, stronger this time. Instead of succumbing to complete nihilism, Marcus's mind registered the scale, the sequence of events. Asterisk, this is a collapse event. Irreversible, cataloged. Asterisk, the despair, while potent, was processed. It was a problem, a colossal one, but also a definitive one. It had a start, and it had an end. The simulation pressed on, twisting time and reality. Marcus was cast into thousands of years of absolute solitude. He was a solitary starship, drifting aimlessly through unending darkness, every connection severed, every voice silenced. He felt the erosion of identity, the slow decay of memory, the agonizing stretch of eternity without a single point of reference. His consciousness became a whisper, fading, threatening to extinguish itself. His brainwave patterns flattened, indicative of profound sensory deprivation and isolation-induced psychosis. Again, the neural data told a different story than expected. While the desolation was immense, Marcus's mind, instead of breaking, began to adapt. It created routines, internal monologues, even imaginary companions, not to escape the solitude, but to manage it. Asterisk, another problem to solve. How does one endure endlessness? Break it down. Asterisk, his mental processes, instead of fragmenting into madness, found a strange, internal rhythm, a pragmatic endurance. Then came the dismemberment by creatures that should not exist. The simulation plunged him into a realm where physical laws dissolved, where monstrous entities of shifting geometry and impossible biology tore at his simulated flesh, each separation a fresh wave of agony designed to shatter his physical and mental integrity. These were terrors from the deep, uncharted abysses of the human psyche, embodying the fear of utter vulnerability and violation. His neural sensors registered explosive bursts of terror, pain, and disgust. Yet, even as his simulated body was ripped apart, Marcus's mind refused to yield to the pure, overwhelming panic. He noted the patterns of attack, the impossible angles of their forms, the texture of their non-existent skin. He was categorizing, observing, even as he was being unmade. It was less a fight and more an analytical dissection of the horror. His consciousness, instead of shattering, seemed to retreat inward, becoming an observer of its own torment. The simulation, perceiving this unexpected resilience, unleashed its ultimate weapon, the fragmentation of consciousness. It sought to dissolve his very concept of self, to convince him that nothing was real, that his memories were false, his identity an illusion. He experienced countless lives simultaneously, witnessed his own birth and death in 1,000 different realities, his personal narrative dissolving into an incoherent jumble of sensation and information. The data feeds became a chaotic storm of conflicting signals, reflecting a mind under siege, desperately trying to find an anchor. It was here, at the absolute zenith of psychological assault, that Vel'thara and her team witnessed the truly unprecedented. Marcus's neural patterns, instead of collapsing into complete incoherence, stabilized around a single, powerfully resilient thought. It wasn't defiance, nor faith, but a pragmatic acknowledgement of existence, regardless of its authenticity. The holographic display of his internal monologue, a feature designed for monitoring self-talk under duress, flashed with a simple, profound statement. So what? Still need to keep going. His mind was not fighting the illusion. It was acknowledging it, processing it, and moving past it. If nothing was real, then the illusion of nothingness was simply another state of being, another problem requiring a solution. Perseverance. The 17 minutes, a lifetime of terror, wound down. The simulation, having thrown everything it had, retreated. The chamber's deep hum slowly subsided, replaced by a soft, mechanical hiss as the heavy black door began its ascent. The observation deck, bathed in the returning ambient light, held its collective breath. When the door finally retracted fully, revealing the interior, a gasp rippled through the alien delegates. Chen stood within, leaning heavily against the pristine black wall. His usually pallid skin was now a ghostly white, slick with sweat that plastered strands of dark hair to his forehead. His entire body trembled, a visible tremor that suggested profound exhaustion. As the door opened fully, he stumbled forward a step, his stomach clenching violently. He vomited discreetly, a choked, visceral retch, into a small, sterile receptacle that a quick-thinking Quaesitor technician had provided. His brown eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with an angry red, yet he remained on his feet. Vel'thara, her centuries of detached, scientific observation momentarily forgotten, rushed forward, her concerned violet skin pulsing with urgency. 2 Quaesitor medics followed, preparing diagnostic equipment. Marcus, seeing their approach, slowly raised a hand, not in greeting, but in a weary, dismissive wave, signaling he was all right. "Mr. Chen," Vel'thara began, her voice trembling slightly, a rare display of emotion. Her 4 eyes meticulously scanned his face, searching for any sign of lasting trauma, any fracture in his psyche. Can you describe what you experienced?" Marcus wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his breathing still ragged. He took a moment, gathering his words, his gaze distant, lost in the echoes of simulated oblivion. "It was bad," he admitted, his voice hoarse, a raw rasp. "Very bad. Worse than anything real I've ever seen." He paused, a deep, shuddering breath filling his lungs. But he searched for the right words, a profound realization dawning on him even as he spoke. But it had an end. Everything has an end. That helps. His statement hung in the air, a simple, yet utterly profound truth that resonated far beyond the sterile confines of the Quaesitor. It was a pragmatism born not of courage, but of relentless, grinding endurance, a philosophy forged in the fires of a dying world and the cold vacuum of space. The simulation, designed to break the mind with endless, unresolvable horror, had encountered a human who understood that even the worst nightmare eventually yielded to the dawn. The stark admission, but it had an end. Everything has an end. That helps. Echoed in the hushed confines of the Quaesitor's observation deck. A simple, yet profoundly unsettling truth. Marcus Chen, still pale and visibly shaken, wiped his mouth again, his bloodshot eyes holding a distant, haunted quality. He leaned against the obsidian-smooth wall of the now-open simulation chamber, his trembling a testament to the ordeal, yet his stance remained unbroken. Dr. Vel'thara, her iridescent skin now a swirling canvas of deep violet and questioning blues, stared at the human, her four compound eyes wide with a dawning realization that threatened to reframe centuries of Quaesitor understanding. Her medics, poised to rush in with advanced trauma units, hesitated, sensing the unprecedented gravity of the moment. It was Ambassador Krell 9 of the Draxian Empire who, with a guttural growl that was instantly translated, broke the stunned silence. His reptilian form coiled and uncoiled with agitated disbelief, his bifurcated tongue flickering rapidly. "Impossible!" he hissed, his multifaceted eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that bordered on accusation. "This is utterly impossible. Our finest warriors, trained from hatchlinghood in psychological resilience, require months of intensive therapy, specialized neural recalibration, and often complete memory repatterning after experiencing even minor simulated duress. Your species' physiological responses, your primitive neural architecture, it simply does not compute. To emerge coherent after such an assault, it defies all known metrics of sentient endurance." Krell 9 stepped forward, his indignation palpable, his skepticism a force of nature. "You claim it was bad, human, yet you stand. You speak. Our data shows a complete, unmitigated exposure to unmaking horrors. Your mind, by every scientific and psychological principle we understand, should be shattered beyond repair. You should be a dissociative husk, a gibbering wreck, lost in the echoes of manufactured oblivion. This is an insult to the very concept of psychological fortitude." Marcus, still breathing heavily, pushed himself off the wall, a weary sigh escaping his lips. He looked at Krell 9, his tired eyes meeting the Draxian's accusatory stare without flinching. His voice, though still hoarse, held a newfound, quiet authority. "Then perhaps," he began, a faint, almost imperceptible shrug rippling through his shoulders, "perhaps your species, perhaps all of you," his gaze swept across the bewildered alien delegates. "Perhaps you just think too much before you act." He paused, a profound weariness settling over his features, a shadow of the unending struggle that had shaped his species. "Sometimes," he continued, his voice barely above a murmur, yet cutting through the expectant silence like a honed blade, "sometimes you just need to do, because someone has to do it." His words, delivered without fanfare or grandiosity, were a revelation. They resonated with a stark, brutal pragmatism that Vel'thara, in her 300 years of meticulous observation, had never truly encountered. Her iridescent skin pulsed with a frenetic energy, shifting from the deep indigo of concern to a kaleidoscope of vibrant, intellectual discovery. Her four eyes widened, not in shock this time, but in a sudden, profound understanding that illuminated the hidden truth behind the human enigma. It wasn't that humans were inherently more courageous in the way other species defined it, not with a reckless disregard for danger, nor a genetically engineered lack of fear. It was something far more fundamental, forged in the crucible of a relentlessly hostile planet. Humans hadn't evolved in the serene, controlled environments of many advanced civilizations. They had clawed their way to the stars from a volatile, unforgiving world. Earth, even in its advanced state, remained a brutal teacher. Wildfires, devastating floods, societal upheavals, the constant, grinding struggle for resources, the omnipresent threat of disease and violence. Life for humanity was a ceaseless process of problem-solving, a relentless pursuit of solutions to immediate, overwhelming threats. Vel'thara realized that this wasn't courage as an emotional state. It was courage as a pragmatic philosophy of survival. When faced with the insurmountable, with the terrifying unknown, when something absolutely had to be done and no one else was stepping forward, a human simply raised their hand. Not because they sought glory, not because they lacked fear, but because the alternative was worse: inaction, paralysis, or worse, succumbing to the overwhelming problem. It was a species that had, through millennia of hardship, cultivated an astonishing ability to endure, to compartmentalize terror, and to focus on the next necessary step, no matter how daunting. In the ensuing months, the echoes of Marcus Chen's 17 minutes in the simulation chamber resonated across the stars. News of the Threshold Protocol and the humans' improbable resilience spread like wildfire through subspace channels, translated into countless languages and debated in countless council halls. Marcus's experiment became legendary, an anecdotal marvel that slowly but irrevocably began to reshape intergalactic perception of humanity. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive, impulsive, or unpredictable was now viewed through a new, complex lens of respect and a certain, unsettling dread. Other species, once content to categorize humans as an emerging, emotionally volatile civilization, began to study human psychology with an intensity usually reserved for ancient, complex empires. The Vorin, their logical processors churning through Marcus's neural data, struggled to reconcile his adaptation in real time with their models of mental fortitude. The empathetic lumina, their bioluminescent patterns now flickering with a mixture of awe and bewilderment, began to understand that sometimes true resilience wasn't about avoiding pain, but about processing it and finding the resolve to continue. The Draxian Empire, despite Krell-9's initial disbelief, found itself reevaluating its own warrior conditioning, wondering if their meticulous preparations had inadvertently stifled a more fundamental, visceral form of endurance. The Galactic Federation, an assembly of ancient and powerful civilizations, eventually created a new protocol. When impossible missions arose, when volunteer crews were needed for tasks deemed suicidal or for reconnaissance into profoundly unstable regions of space, missions that would send other species into spirals of fear or analytical deadlock, a curious pattern began to emerge. Before the full dangers could even be articulated, before the call for volunteers was complete, there were always humans. Always. Their hands would rise, unassuming, almost weary, yet utterly resolute. Not because they sought death, but because they had inherited Marcus Chen's pragmatic understanding. Someone has to do it. Marcus Chen himself, having briefly touched the raw nerve of the universe's collective dread, eventually returned to his life on Earth. He went back to Seattle, back to the quiet, methodical work of mending life support systems on orbital platforms, his hands once again calibrating vital systems, ensuring the fragile balance of life. The fires and the riots, the simulated horrors and the cosmic implications, remained etched within him, but they did not define him. They had simply added another layer to his profound weariness, another reason to just keep going. Dr. Vel'thara, however, never forgot. Marcus's 17 minutes in the chamber and his quiet confession had become a foundational shift in her understanding of sentient life. She had begun the experiment seeking to understand limits, to chart the boundaries of consciousness. What she discovered, through the unassuming spirit of a human maintenance engineer, was that humans, perhaps more than any other species she had ever encountered, did not truly believe in limits. They believed only in problems, and problems, by their very nature, existed to be solved, endured, or simply outlasted. And so, somewhere in the cold, indifferent depths of space, whenever ancient civilizations conversed about the strange, resilient species from the third planet of an insignificant system, someone inevitably recounted the story of the volunteer who raised his hand. Because in the end, it was not the absence of fear that defined courage. It was the simple, unheroic, yet utterly profound act of a hand raised, despite it all. The heavy chamber door, having briefly swallowed a man and spewed forth a new understanding, receded with a sigh of pressurized air. Marcus Chen stood, a spectral figure against the pristine black, visibly ravaged but undeniably whole. His admission, it was bad, but it had an end. Everything has an end. That helps. Was a truth as stark and unyielding as the vacuum of space. It was a truth born not of heroism, but of survival, forged in the relentless crucible of a hostile world. Ambassador Krell 9, voice sputtering with reptilian incredulity, could only see defiance where Dr. Vel'thara, her iridescent skin alight with a profound, intellectual fire, began to glimpse a deeper, more unsettling wisdom. Marcus's quiet assertion that sometimes when you think too much, you simply need to do because someone has to do it, unlocked a secret buried deep within the human psyche. It was in that moment that Vel'thara truly understood. Not a courage born of brute strength or technological superiority, but one honed by millennia of raw, pragmatic endurance. Humanity, shaped by fires and floods, by chaos and the cold indifference of the cosmos, had learned not to conquer fear, but to process it, categorize it, and then, inexorably, to move past it. They saw not insurmountable limits, but merely problems yet to be solved, or perhaps simply to be outlasted. The simple, almost weary raising of a hand, a gesture once dismissed as impulsive, became a symbol of a species that, in the face of the unknown, chose always to step forward. And so, the quiet legend of Marcus Chen rippled across the stars, forever altering the perception of an insignificant species from a volatile planet. The Galactic Federation, in its ancient wisdom, adapted. For tasks deemed impossible, for ventures into the terrifying void, a new protocol emerged. Humans, driven by that intrinsic, almost burdensome weariness of fear, would always be the first to volunteer. Their hands, raised without hesitation, became a beacon in the darkness, a testament to a courage that transcended brute force. Marcus, a man who merely wished to finish his shift, returned to his ordinary life, but his legacy, an enduring echo of resilience, lingered within the vast, silent orbit of the cosmos. What does this story illuminate about the nature of fear for you? In the face of overwhelming odds, what would compel your hand to rise? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember to like this video and subscribe to The Silent Orbit for more journeys into the profound unknown.